Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. And today we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the Russia-Ukrainian war. So over the last 24 to 48 hours, we have seen a fairly significant escalation on the part of Ukrainian forces. And that escalation has involved the use of long-range cruise missiles targeting three different sites inside of the Russian Federation. Now, what makes these strikes interesting is that it proves that the Ukrainians indeed have the capability to at least launch missiles that could hit Moscow. And we'll look at one of the longest range strikes that occurred. If we look at the Ukrainian-Russian border here, here. I'm going to get yelled at for that one. This is where the fighting is taking place. And we look at where, again, in all probability, the Ukrainians launched these what are effectively cruise missiles. The first strike was here. This is a strategic bomber base. And apparently, at least one or two aircraft of these Bear bombers were hit while they were on the ground by this Ukrainian weapon system. And we'll talk about that weapon system here in a minute or two. And additionally, they also hit another area here near Ryazan, and again, another base that has strategic bombing assets and refueling assets as well. So I believe these right here are backfire bombers. And then again, more backfires. But this is one of the bases that were, again, struck by Ukrainian forces. Not a lot of damage was done, but nonetheless, the Ukrainians proved that they have the ability to hit targets that are well within their distance of also hitting Moscow. If you look at the distance of Saratov, and I believe the airbase is called the Engels Air Base, located there, then depending on where they were fired from Ukrainian territory, then without a doubt, they could launch a system that could effectively hit Moscow, pending that the Moscow air defenses do not shoot it down. So what system was used in this strike? Well, apparently the Ukrainians are using Tupolev Tu-141s. These drones are not the type of drones that you see being used by the United States, such as the Reaper or the Predator. These are much faster systems. These are jet-powered systems designed as target drones. So these are fired by the operator and are, again, designed for Russian air defenses or Russian aircraft to then shoot these systems down that simulate other aircraft or cruise missiles. And they have a range of over 500 miles. And they have a maximum speed of 620 miles per hour. And let me back up. The range is actually 620 miles. At least the reported range of these systems. It's probably greater than that, depending on what kind of upgrades the Ukrainians have done to them. And they usually did not carry explosives, but in this case, in all probability, the Ukrainians retrofitted them with some sort of explosive device. So we talked about at the onset of hostilities that the Ukrainians possess such systems, and not just these systems, other systems as well, including ballistic missile technology that could be extended, that could have the Ukrainians launch semi-ballistic missiles in the direction of Moscow. So I guess you could say that the Ukrainians, given recent strikes by Russia in terms of attempting to turn the lights out in Ukraine, have decided to send a message to Russia saying, hey, look, if this continues, if these attacks against our energy infrastructure continues, we are willing to escalate this conflict. Not just by targeting possible air bases where the Russians are firing these long-range cruise missiles. Obviously, these bombers take off and they stay within standoff distance, and then they launch these long-range KH-101 cruise missiles towards Ukrainian targets. And the Ukrainians right now are saying, look, we can hit deep inside of Russia, and in all probability, they're also saying, look, if you continue to target our energy infrastructure, turn the lights out in the middle of winter, turn the heat off in the middle of winter, turn the water off, we have the ability to hit Moscow and other cities. It would not surprise me in the least if the Ukrainians do not launch cruise missiles towards Moscow at some point. It would be well within their right to launch said operation, given the ongoing Russian operations against Ukrainian targets. Again, this is a war, and in war, this is what happens. Furthermore, it's interesting to also see the Ukrainians continue to talk about Belarus and the reported massing of Russian troops and a possible Russian offensive operation either from Belarusian territory again towards Kiev or some other locale. Most likely, it would be towards Chernihiv. Again, this operation by Russia, in my opinion, would not take place until late summer of next year. Midsummer, late summer of next year. But we know the Russians have moved up to 9,000, possibly more, troops into Belarus. Many of these troops are being trained at Belarusian sites. They're training reservists, called up conscripts of the Russian military. Many sites, hundreds of sites, are being used right now inside of the Russian Federation proper. And Belarus is now just an extension of this ongoing mobilization effort by the Russian military. So the next question is, would this warrant, and because Belarus was used as a staging area to launch attacks into Ukraine, remember the main operation designed to seize control of Kiev, sorry, not a diversion. This was an unsuccessful operation by the Russian military to take control of Kiev. And it failed. So does this give that this attack originated on Belarusian soil and possibly new attacks could occur from Belarusian soil? Does this give the Ukrainians the right to launch military operations in the direction of Belarus? Could we see a Ukrainian invasion of Belarus? And would Ukraine be within its rights to launch said invasion into Belarus? I say yes on both accounts. They would. Absolutely. And given the mobilization efforts currently by the Ukrainians, it would not surprise me in the least if the Ukrainians launched some sort of operation into Belarus. If the Ukrainians launched a major military operation designed to make a push towards Minsk and overthrow Lukashenko, what would that do to the ongoing conflict? Difficult to say. Could the Ukrainians launch an effective offensive into Belarus? Again, difficult to say. We know the capability is present. We know the mobilization efforts by the Ukrainians is definitely enough to accumulate enough force north of Kiev and to at least threaten an operation into Belarus. I think a successful operation by the Ukrainians that could make a push towards Minsk could change the entire dynamics of this conflict. Could the Ukrainian efforts to make it appear that they are getting ready for an offensive operation south of Zaporizhia designed to cut the land corridor from Mariupol west towards Crimea, could the Ukrainians be preparing for an operation in the direction towards Belarus? Wouldn't surprise me. I believe that would be the kind of innovative strategy that the Ukrainians could use to win this conflict, to win this war. If we did see a successful Ukrainian operation deep into Belarus and threaten the regime in Minsk, we could see that force the Kremlin to reassess its position in Ukraine, meaning the territory that it currently controls. Now, would that be enough to cause the Russians to pull back to the pre-war boundaries, meaning withdraw from Mariupol, withdraw from Melitopol, withdraw from all these areas and go back into Crimea? Probably not, because I don't think at this point the Ukrainians, at least right now, are preparing to stop hostilities. I think their military goal right now is to take back all lands that have been taken by the Russians or Russian sympathizers. Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea. You know, Zelensky, Times Man of the Year, is talking about such activity. So again, I would not rule out some sort of operation, possibly a major operation, by the Ukrainians towards Belarus. Not outside the realm of possibility. Again, a lot of eyes right now are on area south of Zaporizhia and the talk of this Ukrainian offensive in the direction of Melitopol, designed to cut the Russian ability to supply its forces in Crimea through this land bridge. And that would leave one option, again, the Kerch Strait Bridge. But the problem is, for the Ukrainians, the Russians have reinforced this area tremendously. It would probably be much more costly for the Ukrainians to attack towards Melitopol then launch a major operation into Belarus. The Ukrainian military, probably at this stage, and given the technology infusion into the Ukrainian armed forces by the West, would probably do a number on the Belarusian military. And again, there's essentially about 9,000 Russian troops in Belarus. Not a massive amount, considering the Ukrainian military is now over a million person strong. So not much again has changed on the front line. Again, the major area of conflict right now is Bakhmut, and again further to the south in this enveloping operation towards Avdiivka. Again, not a lot has changed. But again, we see these cruise missile attacks by the Ukrainians deep inside the Russian Federation with now a proven ability to target Moscow. And again, this talk by the Ukrainians about what is going on inside of Belarus could be setting the stage for a Ukrainian operation into Belarus. It would not surprise me. But that would be a major political decision by Times Man of the Year Zelensky and his U.S. handlers, NATO handlers, to authorize such an operation. But again, I think as NATO planners look at this, they have to realize that a push south towards Melitopol could cause great damage to the Ukrainian military in terms of loss of manpower, loss of personnel, and then ultimately a possible defeat in this area of the conflict. Whereas a more opportunistic play towards Belarus, I would say, should not be taken off the table. That's probably, if I was the battlefield commander, what I would do. But that's where we are. That's what we see. We will have absolutely more content very, very soon. Thank you for joining us today. More to come. And as always, have a good day.